problem with big brand computer manufacturers is that their peripherals have been an afterthought. They'll have good shapes, maybe even good buttons, but then they'll put a 3335 sensor from 5 years ago into the mouse, and then they charge a premium. It just never makes sense. Asus is hoping to improve upon the groundwork laid by their Harp mouse with their ergonomic mouse, the ROG KERIS II Ace. Normally with these types of mice, they're very hollow with cheap feeling plastic, and that's not the case here. The KERIS II is a well-made mouse. The coating reminds me of something like the old Razer coating that was on the Viper V2 Pro, but slightly smoother to the touch. Now, after playing with the mouse, I didn't notice the coating after a while, but I can see this being a little irritating for some people that are sensitive to it. One thing that I liked more than I thought I would is the etching where your thumb and where your ring and pinky fingers go. It gives some added grip to the mouse, and if that's not enough, they've also included some grip tape in the box. There's no creakiness or side button actuation, which is really nice to see. The mouse button tolerances are also very good. There's very little play or wobbling on the mouse 1 and 2. Flipping the mouse over, there's a DPI button and a power button on the bottom. I feel like they could have combined this into one instead of having two different ones. Not really a huge thing, but maybe something for them to think about. Now, there's also a slider where you can change this from the wired mode, which can go up to 8,000 Hertz, and a wireless mode, which goes up to 4,000 Hertz with the included wireless booster that they give you in the box. And then there's a Bluetooth mode, which you can switch on if you want to save battery. Speaking of the battery life, it is really good. It comes in at 107 hours with the RGB off, and I think that's how most of us will be running it in the 2.4 gigahertz mode. In the Bluetooth mode, you'll have 125 Hertz, you'll get 137 hours. So it's not like you're like doubling the battery life. So I would just run it at the 2.4 gigahertz no matter what. And for those of you who don't know what the polling rate does, it pretty much tells you how many times your computer is checking the connection with the mouse. So the higher it is, the more times it is checking the connection with the mouse, which means a more stable connection and also more information for your computer. So you get a nice smooth tracking sensation when you use one of these mice. There's 5 mouse feet on the bottom, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, and 1 around the sensor, and I very much like these. They glide so nicely on any mouse pad. The mouse comes in at 54 grams, and it is very well balanced, which is great if you're continuously picking up and placing down the mouse. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with the build quality of the KERIS II Ace. Definitely miles better than some of the competition out there, and it's definitely swinging up there with the big boys like Razer and Logitech. Now, moving on to the shape, it is a nice ergo shape that's reminiscent of a Zowie EC2. I love the slope where your index and middle finger go. There's like a nice hump there that's super comfortable. And then the slope on the right side is amazing for resting your palm. It's not too aggressive on the sides and has a good amount of width. This is a medium-sized palm grip or like a relaxed claw palm mouse that feels comfortable in the hand. When you compare it to something like a Pulsar X Lite V3 or EC2, KERIS feels a bit flatter, especially near that right side, whereas the other two are more rounded and fill out your entire palm. But using all three, I found them all to be comfortable. Where I can see people picking this KERIS is if you're like a relaxed palm rather than a straight up palm where you have your fingers just straight out. Then I think that's where the other two are better. I have medium hands at 19 by 8.5 centimeters, and my fingers hang off the front edge of the mouse, similar to like the EC2 or the Pulsar mice. I get this little overhang right here near the front of the mouse, so pretty much I just bring my fingers up a little bit to get my fingertips onto the mouse into like a relaxed claw, relaxed palm type of deal here. After comparing these three mice, it popped into mind that this is pretty much a medium-sized Death Adder V3 Pro. So if you wanted a smaller version of that mouse, here you have it. For the buttons, I'm really impressed with their optical switches on the mouse 1 and 2. They're slightly tough to push in at first, but the crispiness is there with little to no pre-travel and a nice cushioned bottom out. The side buttons have a little bit of pre-travel, but it's nothing too out of the ordinary. It's pretty much what we've been seeing in other mice. Do wish that these side buttons were a tad bit bigger. They feel small, especially for this size of a mouse. The scroll wheel is light and defined, and it lights up in the RGB. So let's drop a sound test of the ROG KERIS II. Asus's Armory software seems a bit heavy. I would love to see them incorporate something like a browser software that's light and that, you know, you're only installing this one single peripheral. I don't have a motherboard, I don't have a GPU from them, so having all this extra software that's heavy and bloated on my computer is not something that I really want. So, and you know, unless I'm getting more out of it. So I would love to see them just have a peripheral software for this mouse, especially if you're not fully invested into the ROG system yet. But the good thing is the software is not necessary, as you can change everything on the mouse. You won't be able to put new firmwares on it, but at least you can change the settings. Using the pairing button and the back button, you can change the pulling rate. You can change the lift-off distance with the pulling rate from 1mm to 2mm by pressing the forward and pairing button. But again, if you do want firmware updates, you'll need the software, and it just feels like a lot. Now this does have the 3950 sensor in it, and it performs about as well as any other 3950 iteration mouse like the Razer mice. So the sensor feels great so far, and I'm big on use and not numbers and things like that. And when I play with this mouse, it feels super accurate. There's no jitteriness, there's no wondering why I missed a shot. It just feels like everything is one-to-one, and I was really enjoying my time with this mouse. Which brings me to my next point, the performance. And I was hitting some incredible shots with this mouse. I felt right at home right away. And normally when that happens, it's because of the shape. Well, the sensor too, but mainly the shape. It just tells me that the shape is giving me a good amount of mouse control. And with a sensor like that, you almost become unstoppable. People do not want to see you in the server with this, trust. The comfort is there. It has one of the lowest latency sensors out at the moment. It can run at these higher pulling rates. Asus has hit another home run with the Asus KERIS II in terms of creating a mouse that can compete with the big boys in the peripheral space, the Logitechs, the Razers, the Pulsars. Now, if I could complain about one thing about this mouse, it would be the pricing at $160. I know companies are charging that at the moment, but you know, as Asus is trying to break into the space, you know, they need a price that's gonna entice people to come in and give it a try. And I think 120 would be more of a price that will get people to come in and actually try this mouse and undercut some of the big dogs in the space. And they're a big name brand, so people are gonna think, hey, you're overcharging us as is. They're gonna already question why you're charging that much. So, you know, hit them right where it hurts, the money, and $120 would be perfect for this mouse. So maybe something to think about, Asus, maybe something to think about. All right, so that's gonna do it for my time on the Asus KERIS II. So if you're an ergonomic mouse connoisseur, I think that this mouse is worth a try. You're getting some top tier performance here. And if you're somebody that's coming from like a DeathAdder V3 Pro and you want something a little bit smaller, if Razer's not doing it, others will. So this is it right here. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for my time. It has been your boy BT. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.